Hey everyone, welcome back to the Resale Stack. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Mailys. If you are new here, this is the podcast where we explore the companies, technology, and trends shaping the future of luxury resale.
Today we're diving into a really foundational part of the resale ecosystem, peer-to-peer marketplaces. So that's platforms like eBay, Poshmark, Vinted, Vestiaire Collective, and much more.
These are platforms where individuals usually sell directly to other individuals. But you will see with resale, a lot of the sellers on peer-to-peer platforms are actually managed marketplace companies. The marketplace then acts as a facilitator. So they will help handling payments, the logistics, like providing you with a shipping label, and sometimes, but not typically, they will help also with authentication. The inventory is all added by the seller though, so it's you as an individual or a company having an account on the peer-to-peer marketplace that will create the listing.
And in the luxury resale world, peer-to-peer has really taken off. It offers more access and more variety and often better prices for shoppers, but it also comes with some real challenges.
Yeah, and some challenges can be inconsistent pricing, vague product titles or descriptions, and a discovery experience that can feel a bit chaotic, especially when you're trying to find something specific.
So we're going to break down the pros and cons of the peer-to-peer platforms for both the end users, so for the buyers, and the individual sellers or merchants who use them at scale.
And we will also talk about where tech, especially tools like Trendful's catalog API, can help improve pricing recommendation, product naming, SEO, and even sell-through rates.
So whether you're a casual reseller, a business owner, or just curious about why your search results on these platforms are a bit of a mess, this episode is for you.
Let's jump in.
So I'm really excited to dive into this topic of peer-to-peer marketplaces. We even definitely used them when we started as an online resale merchant. And I know that you have experience using them even for yourself in the past.
Yes, I'm a big fan actually of buying and selling things personally on peer-to-peer marketplaces. And I've experienced using peer-to-peer marketplaces in the US, but also in France.
And to give a bit of a background and context to hopefully help people listening, some of the really big name peer-to-peer marketplaces could include, eBay, which has been around, I think, probably the longest, Vestiaire Collective, which is super big in Europe where it began, and then also starting to really gain more traction in the US, especially after it acquired Tradesy in the US, because Tradesy used to be a really big name for the US market. And then there's also Vinted, which is huge in Europe. And I would say it's more like casual resellers that are using Vinted. What do you think? You've used Vinted a lot.
I've used Vinted a lot in France. I think I like probably sold over 20 pieces on Vinted when I was preparing to move to the US and I needed to get rid of a bunch of things in my closet.
Then there's also Poshmark, another platform that has been around for a while as well. And it's really big on community and having that like social layer with a much more of a US focus. Would you say that Vinted is kind of more like a Poshmark level consumer or like an eBay?
I would say it's more Poshmark. I feel like the experience is a little bit more curated towards fashion, which Poshmark does. eBay is much more agnostic, like there's any kind of
Yeah.
sellers on there.
And am I forgetting? I feel like there's more peer-to-peer resale platforms out there that we're not even naming.
Yeah, there are definitely more. The list goes on. If we talk about fashion, there is StockX, Grilled, Depop, Mercury, which I have used the two last one, Depop and Mercury as well. And I think we could go on and on with the different peer-to-peer marketplaces online that cater to different levels of resale. But those are the ones that are geared toward fashion, at least.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that peer-to-peer is like a different game than managed marketplaces like the Fashion File, Rebag, and others that exist out there.
Yeah, you're right. With a managed marketplace, you have a more curated sampling of items, and either the company owns the items or they have them on consignment. But with peer-to-peer sellers, either individuals or resale businesses list their items themselves on these marketplaces.
And some other aspects of peer-to-peer, usually there's no centralized like authentication or even like pricing recommendations. There are some like I know Vestiaire Collective does authentication. So there are peer-to-peer that have a more like high touch aspect to their marketplace, but usually the it has a very low barrier to entry, and they usually have like a blend of social commerce that is used for people selling as well.
Yeah, I think that yeah, most of the platforms are, but I can't name some right now. Most of the platforms can just create an account and start listing. Some platform though, and maybe you have some example, you have to enroll and apply as a seller, and so they kind of play a role of filtering who he's selling and curating their inventory that way.
There's also companies, marketplaces like First Dibs, where you had to kind of like enroll as a business versus you're an individual selling. Like you would have to prove that you're a company rather than just an individual.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's you would be the one knowing the best on that side because you were the one when we were resale merchants creating all of those profiles on the different platforms.
Yeah. And when we were a resale merchant, we really like to use Tradesy. That was a really great peer-to-peer marketplace to use back in the day. I even used it personally um, before I was even starting Trendful as a resale business. And I remember when the like the seller's commission that you would give to Tradesy was like 11%, which was very low compared to what it is now. Um, I'm not even sure what it is now, probably for Vestiaire Collective or for some of the other marketplaces.
It's
What was
probably around 20%. I am actually not 100% sure. That's something that we can look into, but I would guess it's around 20%, and sometimes some platforms go up to like 25%, which seems like kind of a lot sometimes when you do most of the work with listing and communicating with the buyer. But that's true that some of those platforms provide authentication, so that makes sense that you would have a higher commission. But yeah, I don't know the exact number. I know that when I use Vinted in France, which I believe they started trying to reach the US market as well, the fees were very, very low as well. I don't think it was a percentage. I think it was also a fixed like price, but it was around 10% or less.
Oh yeah, I think most of them start very low and then as they gain more traction, they increase their fees, which makes sense because if you look at the auction world, you have seller's commission as well when you are selling through an auction, and that's typically going to be around at least 18%. Sometimes it can be higher to up to like over 20% as well. So I think the percentages are probably very similar to what you have at auction, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't know if we should like start with either the way sellers create an account and they can list items online first, so how the inventory is reaching the website. I know, for example, for Vestiaire Collective, you can create an account and then quickly you can add your own item to their website, and you will have to enter a brand, select a brand, then a model, and then add a description of the item, add a few pictures. They have a form that can guide you through the type of model that are associated with each brand, or even the type of fabric that is associated with each of those models as well. But it's pretty high level. It's not yet very precise and accurate when it comes to at least luxury fashion. And then you are the one as seller finding the price and determining like what price you want to list your item at. I think I tried this system the other day and I didn't see any recommendation for pricing when I was trying to list my item.
With the seller perspective, they're also probably, if they're a company, most likely cross-listing across a bunch of different peer-to-peer marketplaces. So every marketplace is a bit different. And yeah, as you're saying, it's easy to get started. You have to manually list the items yourself. So that's you filling out all that information, as Mailys is saying, and they kind of try to guide you, but it's not really if you're an individual, you don't always know exactly what your item is. Like you could have an idea of what it is. Every platform kind of has a different way in which to name items too, which can be confusing for the person trying to list. But the other kind of benefits are if you're the seller, you don't need to have a storefront, you don't need to have a back end, you can just list everything through these platforms. But I think, as you were saying, I know when we used Tradesy, when we would list items to sell, they had a pricing recommendation, but it didn't work for luxury items. You would give very strange pricing recommendations for those luxury items that you're trying to list. So it wasn't, and that was, back in 2018, 2019. So the idea of like pricing, I don't even think was really it wasn't being recommended to people like how to price your items. And I think even now that hasn't been the focus on like when you list an item, like what you should price it at least on most marketplaces.
Yeah, I agree. In any marketplace that provide pricing recommendation, it can be all over the place. So either it can be very low or sometimes high, or you can have ranges, but those ranges are pretty wide. And I think reasons why the pricing recommendation given by peer-to-peer marketplace don't work is because they haven't solved the issue of identifying and categorizing the listings that are on their website. Meaning that when a seller goes on and lists an item, they put the brand in, they can try to find the model, but the model list that they have to select from or the model that they enter doesn't identify precisely the item they are trying to list. So to give an example, they will go and want to sell a Louis Vuitton Neverfull tote damier in size, but there are also other types of Neverfull that exist. There's Neverfull pouch, there is also limited edition, and sometimes they will only name their item Louis Vuitton Neverfull. And that's based on this information and this label that the platform will give pricing recommendation from. So they get pricing from maybe someone that listed a pouch, someone that listed a Neverfull tote damier, someone that listed a limited edition of the Neverfull tote, and try to make an average from it. And so obviously like those prices are not accurate.
Yeah. I think it also is that each platform has different ways in which you list your item as well. And each platform will have like a different type style of like form in which you create a listing from. So with like Vestiaire Collective, for example, when you go to list a handbag, you have like a drop down of different like models to choose from. And if you don't see the model of the bag within that drop down, you select like an other option. It's very restricted in what you can choose from based on what is on that based on what the platform is saying the model is called. But the way in which Vestiaire Collective calls their models could be different than the way like another platform were to call their models of handbags, for example. So it leads for some like discrepancy, I feel like, and less specificity on what people are naming items.
Yeah,
And I think that's part of the issue is that there isn't really a standardized way in which people can list items and list them in a way that they're named correctly. Because if you look at like managed marketplaces, for example, the naming is pretty standardized for managed marketplaces across the US and like most of the other like Canada and Europe as well. They pretty much name things, I think you would agree, for managed marketplaces similarly. But when you look at peer to peer, it's kind of like all over the place across the board what things are named.
yeah, I definitely agree, especially from the perspective of the Trendful catalog API. So we scrape data from peer-to-peer marketplace and managed marketplaces every week. And the data points coming from peer-to-peer marketplaces are all over the place, and they're much harder to index to our catalog. So we have to retrieve more information, and we can identify products with slightly less confidence because titles for products are not specific, or sometimes they are wrong as well. For us to identify a product with as much confidence than a managed marketplace product.
Something that I saw interesting when you looked at like data when I was looking at in preparation for this call that we're having is that when you look at Vestiaire Collective's listings and when you look at like how things are titled on their like pages when you're searching, the title is usually not very accurate compared to like managed marketplaces on the market. But the description, usually like the person who's listing, because they have Vestiaire Collective has a lot of managed marketplaces that list through them. So the title, because I don't think when you list, you really have much choice about the title. It's like a drop down that you have to select from. And it's determined by Vestiaire Collective. But the description was much more specific. I was seeing that because Rebag, for example, lists a lot to Vestiaire Collective. And the title for the Rebag item would be similar to what is determined by when they're filling out the manual list, filling out the listing for the item. But the description would be very specific, what you would normally see on their managed marketplace website.
Yeah, and luckily,
And that goes into what you're saying about how you need to get more information to determine when you're scraping, you need more information than just like the title of the item. You need to have like actually the description of what people are writing because the description often, what I was seeing, they were basically saying the accurate title in the description, but it wasn't matching like what was being described as the title when you're searching on the web page. Yeah, so if we continue with the the seller perspective. So we talked about how listing process can be like kind of time consuming, it's manual, like there's human error that can happen. There's also discrepancies with what you're kind of allowed to name that item. It can also be hard for merchants who are using peer to peer to scale because there is no structured inventory system. They would have to use something externally to be able to scale their business. The one thing is that a lot of managed marketplaces that use peer to peer to they use it to have more visibility, more discoverability, because when you have a managed marketplace, you're selling through your website, but you want to have different channels in which you sell as well. So that's why a lot of managed marketplaces like Rebag or bigger names sell through peer to peer. They'll cross list a bunch across a bunch of different companies. So you do have services out there that can help you cross list. You have like List Perfectly, you have Vindu that can where you can have an inventory management system with them and then cross list across different platforms easier than having to manually list. I know also Vestiaire Collective, they do have a bulk listing capability that you can have with them, but you have to have a certain number of volume to be able to really make it worthwhile to access that. But when we were a resale business, we were manually listing things, which was very time consuming to do. Especially as we've mentioned, every site's listing process is different. You would have to spend time just doing that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I remember because you mentioned like if you go and list if you use Shopify and you go and list on your own website, you have a title, you have a description, you have a vendor, you have like categories you select from the Shopify backend. But when you go in a peer-to-peer marketplace, those are not the exact fields that you have to fill. So I remember we had a little template on a Google Doc to be able to fill out and copy those description into Tradesy to like list a watch or a handbag. And that was, yeah, a very long process to go through as a business.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was on Tradesy that when you selected the brand would automatically show up in the listing. But I remember when I first started, I was putting the brand name in the title as well. So it was like showing up twice.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's the problem because then the way the information is displayed on the website doesn't look like pretty or straightforward. It's messier for a buyer to filter through the information. And in terms of luxury resale, it also gives a little bit less confidence to the buyer who is trying to make a purchase on your website or the peer-to-peer marketplace.
Yeah, I think the other aspect that I actually discovered yesterday when I was prepping for this call was that I was searching on Vestiaire Collective's website and I was typing in Chanel double flap bag, but I actually misspelled and I said Chanel double flag bag. And I was like, why am I only getting 4 results? Mailys told me, go look in the description. I'm sure those people typed flag when they were describing their item. And I went and I looked, and yeah, all 4 of those listings in the description of their Chanel bag, they typed in Chanel double flag bag in their item description. So when someone is going to search for a Chanel double flap bag, I wonder if those bags will even show up.
Yeah, you're right. Like, how are they gonna be able to sell if that impacts the visibility of their listing? Not often people, I mean, people make typos all the time, but they don't make all the same typos. So if they don't write flag and they like write flop, it's still not gonna show. So yeah, that's definitely having first having not typo tolerant search and but also not having consistent way of listing and naming items does impact the buyer side and the seller who is not going to be able to sell their item at the same speed than someone that has a very clear title and description.
Yeah, I think definitely someone who describes their item in a very clear way can describe the condition in a very clear way. Usually, most sites have a condition rating you can apply to it. But someone that takes the time in their description to outline where the condition problems are, or even takes pictures accurately of where the condition issues are, they're going to have an easier time to sell their item.
Yeah, and it sounds silly when you mention all of those little aspects when it comes to listing an item, but those are all added frictions. An unclear title, description with typos, an image that doesn't properly show the item, the condition, or the color, all that adds up and all that impacts the seller and the buyer experience. And so there are ways to make it better. There are tech out there to make it better. And when I mentioned tech, obviously, I also mentioned Trendful Catalog API. But yeah, this has an impact on everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if it's beneficial now to maybe go back to the buyer experience and maybe talk about how that looks for them now. Now that they have these kind of like messy listings put on a peer-to-peer website, how does it look to search for them? I know that when I was going on it this week to search for items, I still searched like a Chanel double flap bag. I spelled it correctly this time. But I noticed that there was a lot of different items than what you would actually be a Chanel double flap bag. Because if you don't know, a Chanel double flap bag means that there's literally two flaps. There's like the exterior flap with the lock, and then there's like an interior flap inside the bag. That's what a Chanel double flap bag is. And when I was searching, I had a lot of bags that were clearly not that coming up in those search results. Because when you look at, for example, a managed marketplace or our price database that we have, our index of our catalog, a Chanel double flap bag is kind of a staple item, I would say. It's kind of like the most classic option. But the other item that was coming up with Chanel double flap bag was like trendy CC. Those were like the names that I was seeing most of the time, the titles that I was seeing most of the time when I was searching Chanel double flap bag. When you search on like a managed marketplace like the RealReal or Fashion File, you would not have it named in that way.
Yeah, I guess sometimes there are confusions also between model names and features of the bag. And if you enable a search as the website based on title and description, then that's when you don't control the search experience anymore. And that's what Vestiaire Collective does. Like you can search keywords that are in the description of the item. And so if a seller try to describe their item that's not a double flap, but use that mention, then you are gonna find that and it's gonna affect the created list of items that the buyer can see. And actually, when you say that, it reminded me of the idea that I had earlier, and I completely had a brain fart and forgot about it, is that I was saying in the search, when you search like for a double flap, this sometimes you cannot necessarily make, unless you have a very expert eye, but most of people don't have, you cannot make the distinction between single flap and double flap unless you go in the pictures and inside the bag and know like there's a double or single flap.
Or like you would see some listings have pictures from the side view. And when you have a picture from the side view, you can see the two flaps.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that's what I say. It's like you have to have more of an expert eye,
Yeah.
which you have because you worked as like authenticator in auction house. Like you know to look for details. I do not necessarily look for details. I
You
look
didn't
for
even
clear data or I look
wait.
for like clean data.
Can we just say, I have to say it. You have a Chanel bag and you didn't realize that it was a double flap bag.
Until a very long time, and I was like, for a long time, I was like, why is that single or double flap? Because I don't come from the luxury world. I come just from engineering, data, etc. And then Jackie had to explain to me, double flap means you literally have two flaps in the bag, like in the inside. And then I went to check my bag and I was like, oh, that's a double flap, which I was happy about because usually they are like more popular and priced a little bit higher.
Yeah. So like those are some things that I noticed when I was searching yesterday about from a buyer perspective. So it's kind of real, like kind of messy data that you would see displayed to you. So you have to, when you are a buyer buying through peer to peer, I think that's a different type of person. You really are looking for a deal. You're looking to score an item for a lower price than you would have from a managed marketplace. Because managed marketplace, it's a very curated experience, like hand selected items, either from wholesale vendors or from their customer base who they're buying from. And I think when you're trying to buy something from a peer to peer marketplace like Poshmark or Vestiaire Collective or Vinted, you're looking for how can I find an item for a lower price than I would get at a managed marketplace.
Yeah, definitely. And there's maybe people that love this aspect of like, it's almost like thrift shopping where you go in a store and try to find the treasure that's like you are gonna have for a discount. But personally, I hate that. I
Well,
want to have the discount and I want to easily be able to find my item.
I feel like you're really hunting. I feel like it really reminds me of like when we were a resale merchant hunting at estate sales for items and having to search. It's the same thing. You're just searching through an online listing instead of like a physical product. Like, and at estate sales, you were searching through items that, like in a pile. But here you're just like searching through pages on a website.
Yeah, that's very like a good comparison for it. But I would think that it's not pleasant for most of the people. I think peer-to-peer marketplace can still achieve a very curated experience with still being open to very different sellers. Some that are business or some that are just one time that are just doing one time sale.
Well, I think that can definitely happen. I think that Vestiaire Collective gets the closest to that curated experience. Maybe you have something like that with like a StockX or like another peer-to-peer marketplace that's really focused on luxury resale. It's harder to do that with. It's harder to have that experience, I would say, with Poshmark or eBay because people sell so many different items in ranges of category and price versus those peer-to-peer marketplaces that are really focused on luxury resale.
And so we were mentioning as well that so it impacts the search on the website for the buyer. So if you already go on the Vestiaire Collective website or you already go on eBay or Poshmark or any other of those marketplaces, it does impact you, but you are already on that website. But it also impacts your visibility on search engines. So when someone is looking for a Chanel double flap or an item like that, usually a lot of listings that are coming up are from managed marketplaces and not peer-to-peer marketplaces. And that's, to me, it's like a real proof that peer-to-peer marketplaces are not built to optimize their visibility on search engines, but there are ways they can do it.
I guess they just have assumed that they've created this community and that you are more likely to go search on that website versus Google shopping.
Yeah, but I feel like, especially in the US, they are wrong to think that. If they think that, they are wrong because managed places they start taking a lot of room. Like you have the RealReal, Fashion File, etc. Those are like big big managed marketplaces, and people like them, like the experience they have.
But I think it goes back to the fact that peer to peer, when it comes to resale, came became more popular first. And so at the time that peer to peer was starting to become it was considered the way in which to solve like resale. I feel like that's how peer to peer was thought to be, like this is the answer.
Yeah, the resale industry has changed a lot in the past 5, even 10 years, I would say. But especially in the last 5 years, the way people shop and how many people are going towards now resale is very different. So that's why peer-to-peer marketplaces have to adjust and potentially use tech to be able to create this curated experience and be able to retain more sellers and more buyers.
I think now that we've kind of went through seller versus buyer perspective, we can kind of let's explore like how tech like Trendful's catalog API can help. So we've mentioned some pain points peer-to-peer sellers and also the platforms themselves may face, which with like inconsistent titling, mispricing, or outlier like high pricing, poor search slash discoverability, and also a lack of real-time market data. Because even if some of these platforms may have a internal pricing tool for merchants to use, it's probably based on pricing data of that peer-to-peer marketplace, not of the overall view of the resale market.
Yeah, it's based on solely the marketplace, and also it's based on listings that haven't been well named or categorized, and so it can be just a mashup of different models or style within like an estimate that's given to a seller. So if we take all first the titles and the description, so there are different ways that peer-to-peer marketplace can improve that. Either they can provide a sort of form where the seller can select the brand and the model, the style they are getting with images. Vestiaire Collective already has a solution like that. It doesn't list accurately every model and every style that exists. It just often when it comes to style, it lists more the fabric, the material, but not actually the name of the style that has been given by the designer. And so that's where Trendful's catalog API can come into place, because when someone either starts type a title or upload an image or goes through a form, we have built a whole catalog of product references, and we have built a whole smart search. So either the seller can actually see all the brands, but see all the models associated with this brand. So I think with Chanel, we have over 7,000 product reference that are organized into models, then styles and size. For Louis Vuitton, I believe it's 35,000 products, 500, that's what I was wanting to say, 3,500 product references organized again into different models and styles. So under the umbrella of, for example, Neverfull Tote, you will have the damier, you would have the monogram canvas, and then you have a ton of actually limited editions. You have AP leather as well. And so that helps either the seller goes through a very more guided listing process, but also to be able to display information that is more consistent, be able to identify more precisely the product, and then display it on the website. And as we were mentioning, it will impact different things. It will impact the search, it will impact the search engine visibility, but it can also impact the way those platforms are giving pricing recommendation at the end. So you can do it, you can list an item with the catalog API either through a step-by-step process where you select brand, model, style. You can just start typing an item, and then it will give you suggestion of titles that you can use with images, so you can try to match your item to like a title. Or you can upload a picture and it will tell you, oh, it looks like a Neverfull, it looks like a Speedy. So there are different ways that peer-to-peer platforms can do it without moving so much away from the way they have already been doing it. Like it's
I
an easy experience.
I think the image recognition is the best one for people to use because like some people they really don't know what their item is, and so just to upload a picture and be like, "Oh, it's this item," is would be so much easier for people to do. I think sellers would actually probably really enjoy that that level of service too, to be able to list an item just by image.
Yeah, definitely. And so that would improve. And also, if they want to identify their product precisely, they would take like better image of their item, but also it will help them so format title. It can also help them format good description that are easily searchable on the website and on search engines. And for the website as well, it can also enable the website to have tags associated to each product reference. So there is a tag for the type of model it is, a tag for the type of style, the brand, and then you can add on other tags, and this will be able to improve the search experience either when someone search and type something or when they apply filter.
Yeah, that would be amazing, I feel like. I think the other big ways that we touched on is how, besides naming recommendations, we could also have enable pricing suggestions based on condition, brand, popularity, and it would be based on sold prices, sold data, rather than just like what's being listed in real time. Because those items that are listed in real time, they could go through several iterations of like lowering the price or like price changes before they're actually sold. And so the fact that our data is based on the price at which it was sold at gives a much more accurate look at what you could then sell your item at.
Yeah. So, yeah, after the seller is either selecting a brand, model, and style through a step-by-step process, typing the title and selecting what product reference exactly it is. For example, Louis Vuitton Neverfull Tote Damier MM, which is an example I used earlier. Or upload an image and we get to identify automatically what bag it is. We have put an exact product reference or SKU, if you want to name it this way, on the item. And we can retrieve from our database through the catalog API what are the different fair market values for that items based on the condition. So usually the next step after you have put a title is select a condition. Website name them slightly differently, but overall, we have built the Trendful catalog API around 4 conditions that are excellent, great, good, and fair, which aligns with the standard of the industry. So once a user select one of the condition and if it fits the excellent condition, we can retrieve what's the estimate for that specific product reference in the excellent condition. That's an average. Platform can still show ranges and be like, you're going to be on the higher side, on the lower side, but you can show an average and give an indication to the seller what they can sell the item at. And even going further, which is something that we have the data for and can like help platforms do, is that you can also show sell-through rates. So maybe a seller will be like, okay, I have my time. I'm not like rushed. I can take time to sell that item. So maybe I'm gonna like price it slightly higher so I can get most money for it. Eventually someone is gonna like buy my item. Or you want to sell it in a week or 2 weeks and you're like, okay, I'm gonna sell it a little bit cheaper just so I can make bucks now. And that's indicators that we can give and provide to sellers through the catalog API.
I think it would be great to help reduce the wide range of like outliers and pricing that exist on peer-to-peer marketplaces to make it easier for buyers to be able to try to find the right item based on condition. Because I know yesterday I was looking at Louis Vuitton Neverfull Tote MM and Damier, and I was looking at, the equivalent of like excellent condition on Vestiaire Collective. Like I would think I was looking at like never worn before is what they name their excellent condition. And you had one listed at over $6,000, and you had another listed at like 1,300. They're like the exact same bag, same condition rating, but you have that vastly difference in pricing. The one that's listed at 6,000 is never going to sell.
I know. Or that's someone that's not at all an expert in coming on the website and they are like, oh, this is an amazing bag. But I don't think that happens. But yeah, when you showed me the listing, I was like, what the heck? Like, why someone would think pricing that way? So there is definitely people that do not know, or people that think I'm just gonna get lucky and like price it very high and someone is gonna buy it. But I don't think it often happens. So giving them indication of that's the average that an excellent condition resale on the market right now, or you can go slightly higher and lower. Obviously depends also on your specific bag, because every bag is unique in terms of what signs of wear they have or do not have. But giving them that alongside sales through rates information, be like, oh, you can expect to sell your item within 1 or 2 weeks or over a month. That can provide a lot of visibility and feel of control for the seller.
I actually had a thought. I think that the discrepancy in pricing also goes back to the discrepancy in search. It's all connected, because if people are searching on the website, on Vestiaire Collective, for example, to find comparables on the market, if they do a typo or they call it something different that they're searching for, they're going to get a reduced number of items that are actually showing to them with pricing. And so they don't have a clear visibility of pricing because of problems like with naming recommendation and how items are organized on the website. The fact that search is not typo tolerant. So when you're looking for comparables on that website, you're not getting an accurate view of what that could be,
Yeah, it's
which
very hard. Like search impacts sellers and
everything
buyers.
it impacts everything, because how do individuals look for pricing? If there's no pricing recommendations when they're listing, they're looking for comparables. And so most likely they're looking for comparables on that specific website. And so if the search is impacted based on how things are named, or um, the fact that if you misspell something, you're going to get a reduced number of items viewed to you. Um, that impacts what you would potentially price that item at as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it does. So that's what we're saying earlier. Earlier, it's like just added little frictions on the website in different aspects: the search for the seller, the search for the buyer, the way they will price, the way they will name, and that impacts the overall experience on every side. So those improving the way sellers can list their item can improve the search. In return will improve the buyer experience, and can improve the website, the peer-to-peer marketplace performances.
Yeah, it could increase conversion of buyers actually going through and purchasing sales. It would create more transparency. So it feels like um, buyers are actually getting having transparent pricing, not feeling like I need to check to make sure this is priced accurately based on like other places. So it would really keep their consumers, their it would really keep the buyers within their community buying from them, and it would also keep the sellers within their community listing and selling items with them.
Yeah, the customer retention would be definitely improved by making those improvements on the website. Something else that a peer-to-peer marketplace can leverage when using tech and using the Trendful's catalog API is tagging items or showing popularity indicators. So you can show if something is trending, if it's like a smart investment, meaning that it retains value over time. You can show those different type of information with the Trendful Catalog API because we do collect popularity information since we track listing from the time they get online to the time they sell.
Yeah, I think the more data and information you can provide buyers and sellers to make informed purchases and also informed ways in which to sell, I think is going to improve the resale market and make it a better and more, I would almost say, like trustworthy experience and curated experience than even what it is now. But I think we could go on and on about this topic. It's a very big topic when you think about it because peer to peer is so popular. And when you look at it and you think, oh, it's solved, it's done. Like there's nothing else that needs to really be improved. And when you actually dig into it, you're like, oh, there are these frictions and pain points that exist still for peer to peer. It can be surprising. But that's a wrap on this episode of the Resale Stack. Whether you're listing your first designer bag on Poshmark or a resale business cross-listing across several major marketplaces, peer-to-peer platforms have opened up resale like never before. But as we've said, they've introduced some chaos into it when it comes to pricing, product data, and discoverability on the market.
Exactly. The beauty of peer-to-peer is in the access and the community, but that shouldn't come at the cost of trust or efficiency. So there's a real opportunity here for technology like the Catalog API to step in and bring some structure to the chaos.
So if you're a peer-to-peer marketplace looking to clean up how items are listed, offer smarter pricing tools to your sellers, or have just more data like sell-through rates, we'd love to chat. You can learn more at trendful.com or email us at jackie@trendful.com.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with anyone navigating the resale world.
See you next time on the Resale Stack, where we break down the tech shaping the future of resale.